10 reasons to update your estate plan. Estate planning is one of my favorite topics for two reasons. Number one, because it's so important. And number two, because it's something that we make this big, challenging, complex, impossible thing. Nobody understands it, so we just avoid it. We never complete our estate plans. I like to take that thing that's so scary and complex, bring it down to earth, and make it something that we can understand so we can complete our estate plans. We're going to talk about three things today. Number one, some quick introductions. Who am I, my team, my company? Number two, the 10 reasons that you may want to consider updating that estate plan of yours. And then lastly, some pointers, tidbits, and ways to tie this all together so you can finally check that off your to-do list. So real quickly, introductions. Who am I? My name is Andrew Hoffmeyer. I am the CEO and Senior Wealth Advisor at Hoffmeyer Wealth Management. It's a firm I started back in 2008, and I'm fortunate to own this company with my wife, Kelsey. Family-owned company, and we have a footprint nationwide. I'm a certified financial planner as well as a certified estate planner. Last I checked, that makes me one of 8 in Colorado that hold both of those designations, the financial planning side and the estate planning side. Throughout this presentation, we're obviously going to go over the 10 reasons you may want to update your estate plan. And the feedback that I've gotten is that it's very helpful when I give you actual hands-on real-life examples. Conversations and situations that I've gone over with clients right here in this very conference room. So I'll try to make a point to give you those actual examples. To kick it off, let's first talk about who needs an estate plan. Who is it for? Well, it's only for rich people, right? It's only for the ultra rich. No, not at all the case. Well, it's only for old people, right? No, that is also not the case. This is my definition. This is Andrew's definition of estate planning. You're not going to find this in a textbook. This is just something I kind of made up. My definition of who needs an estate plan is, number one, anybody with stuff. Number two, anybody with organs, liver, heart, lungs, brain, things that can sadly malfunction and cause us to be incapacitated. And number three, anybody with people you love whom you do not want to burden. Now I'm going to share a quick story that's very personal to me and one of the reasons that I find estate planning so important. This was summer of 2022. And I thank my wife, Kelsey, for allowing me to share this story because it's personal to me, but it's very, very personal to her. Summer of 2022, we're busy at work. We decided we're going to take a staycation. So we're driving to Telluride, Colorado. It's 5 to 6 hours from where we live. And we're a couple hours out. And Kelsey gets a phone call from her aunt. And her aunt's pretty frantic. And she said, "Kelsey, your dad's in the hospital." And this had kind of been a normal thing. He'd been in and out of the hospital a couple times a year. But he was doing good. He was mid-60s. Everything was pretty good. And she says, "I think it's different this time." So we pull over, and Kelsey has this conversation with her aunt. They continue the conversation. We finally get back on the road. We get to Telluride. We're in our room. And by the time we're in our room in Telluride, Kelsey is on the phone with her aunt and with the doctor making end-of-life decisions. What are we going to do with the organs? Do you want to pull the plug? What if we can't resuscitate him? Sadly, he didn't make it. We lost him that night. And what I saw the next couple days was something just kind of horrifying for me. It's a horrible memory because what I saw my wife go through, because her dad did not have an estate plan, and this is not to knock him. Most of Americans, even in our 60s, don't have estate plans. He didn't have an estate plan. So what I saw my wife go through the next couple days, instead of grieving, was sort of this business transaction where she had to make all these formal business type decisions versus grieving and crying and being sad. And that was kind of a changing point for me in my career because I realized I need to really step in with my clients and help them get their estate plans taken care of. Couple definitions on this slide and the next slide. I'm not really going to go into this because estate planning definitions are confusing and I don't want to confuse you any more than we need to be confused when it comes to estate planning. You'll hear me mention some of these things and I'll explain them as I mention them, but if you want to know more about what these definitions are, you've got the Google machine, you have AI, ChatGPT, there's plenty of ways to look up definitions of, for example, what a durable power of attorney is. I'm not going to be a test or anything like that on that content. So, diving into our 10 reasons. Reason number one, to update your estate plan, which really would be if you have no estate plan at all. So that's not necessarily an update, but it is a reason to get one done. I understand it's a big task that seems insurmountable. My sister hates the word plan. She hates the word planning. So whenever it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, whenever that comes up, we aren't even allowed to text her and say, hey, what's the plan? What are we going to do? She does not want to plan, but she does have 2 minor children. And because of that, it was important for her to go through this estate planning process. I also get people in another camp, which is kind of a scary camp, and they say, what do I care? I'm going to be dead anyway. Well, if you don't do any type of estate plan, the judge in the state that you live in is going to decide what happens with your stuff. Even if you don't have much stuff, you still want to have something, some wishes written down. And again, if you have loved ones, you don't want to burden them. So don't stick with the what do I care? I'm going to be dead anyway plan. Where are you in life? Again, some people think it's only for old people, only for rich people. That's not true. An estate plan is really for anybody, regardless of where you're at in life. Just graduated college, became age of majority, 18 years old. Good reason to update an estate plan. Obviously, having children, birth, adoption, big reason to update the estate plan. This couple here on the right, this dude looks a lot like me. This is Kelsey and I. A couple hours after we got married, and it may look like she's saying, hey, I love you so much. I'm so glad we just got married. What she's really saying to me is, hey, is that estate plan done? When are we going to accomplish that? And I'm like, I'm cool. Hands in my pocket. I got this. Don't worry about it. Wherever you are in life, it's important to make sure that estate plan is up to date. Second reason, and a big one, if you did a DIY plan, so here's the scenario, actual client, vacation tomorrow, no wills are out of date, whatever it was, they get out a piece of paper and they write out a will, handwritten will. Trivia question, is that valid? Yes, it is valid. It's called a holographic will. And they're highly contested, so that may not be the best source of a will to have on hand, but they are valid. Holographic will, you go on your vacation, you come home, it's probably time to actually get an official estate plan. I recommend working with a professional. That can be someone like me, that can be an estate planning attorney. I personally don't draft estate plans because I'm not an attorney, but working with a professional is going to do a couple things for you. It's number one, going to highlight opportunities, and number two, it's going to help you avoid pitfalls. 100% of the time that I take someone through this process, we find that there are some uncovered opportunities or there are some pitfalls that the client or the prospective client is about to find themselves in. So very important to work with a professional on that. 3, another big one here. If your plan is more than 5 years old, now I've got a great client story on this one. I love it. It's hilarious. But if your plan is more than 5 years old, number one is probably in some sort of leather binder sitting in your safe, which was just a complete waste of money. But that's what we see. And now we digitize these. So when our clients come in, we actually work on getting their estate plans digitized. So if we need to look at them and see if they need updates or changes, we just pull them up on the screen. And there they are. Easy to read. Here's a stat, 71% of Americans do not have an updated will. That's a huge stat, and I would argue what I see personally right here in the office when a prospective or a potential new client comes in, I'd argue that that number is 100. 100% of people. I don't think I've ever had anyone come in and say, we just updated our estate plan and our wills are up to date. It never happens because, again, it's something that's very challenging, and we make it this big, complicated thing. I like to bring it down. Help people through that process. Bring it down to earth. Changes. Okay, this is my hilarious client story. It's clients of mine. Alan and Christy. Do you know Alan and Christy? If you do, ain't the same ones because I've changed their names for client confidentiality reasons, but we're going to call them Alan and Christy. Alan and Christy came in, and one of my bullet points on their agenda is always estate plan. Update the estate plan, whatever that looks like. So I made sure, this was earlier this year, I made sure to touch on that. I said, are there any changes since you created that estate plan, since it was last updated? And they said, I don't know. And I said, well, when did you create it? And the wife said, I don't know, it's a couple years ago. And the husband's like, no, I think we did that last summer. Dug a little bit more. Their estate plan was 8 years old. Their wills were 8 years old. And I said, okay, has anything changed since then? And I knew the answer to this. So has anything changed since then? They said, well, we got married. Cool. Well, so you got married. Did you have kids? He said, yeah, we have 3 kids. Did you buy a business or anything like that? Again, I knew the answer to this question, but I just kept prying. And by the time we uncovered it all, since their estate plan that they thought was up to date had been created, got married, had 3 kids, and bought not only 1 business, but 2 businesses. I didn't even have to call them out. We all just kind of started laughing. I was like, okay, next meeting, number 1 and the only topic we're going to cover in that next meeting. This slide is a little bit of a segue. I like it right here in the presentation because it just kind of refocuses everybody, refocuses you. Question I get all the time, is a trust right for you? Does it make sense for you to have a trust? There's so many things I can go into here. There's so many different types of trust. We're not going into that today, but here's what I want you to think about. 2 main reasons that I believe a trust might make sense. Number 1, do you want to avoid probate? And number 2, do you want to reach out from the grave after you're gone? That sounds really bad. It's not that bad. You're not a control freak if that's what you want. Again, do you want to avoid probate and do you want to reach out from the grave? Okay, avoiding probate. Will-based planning, estate planning, trust-based estate planning. Will-based estate planning does not avoid probate. Trust-based planning, when implemented correctly, does avoid probate. I'll say it again. Will-based planning does not avoid probate. Trust-based planning does avoid probate when implemented correctly. Client the other day, we're talking about her wills. Her will had been up to date. And her name's Kristen. She said, okay, so since my will's up to date, I don't have to go through probate. Everything's good. I said, no, that is not at all the case. A will is simply a letter you take to the judge. Not only does it not avoid probate, but it doesn't supersede your beneficiary designations that you have on all your accounts. So a will doesn't accomplish all these things that people tend to think that it accomplishes. Going back to my second reason, reaching out from the grave. What do I mean by that? There's so many instances, and the one that I see the most often is minor children. Here's what happens with minor children. Have a client, her name is Amy. Amy was married, had 3 kids, she's now divorced. And I said, Amy, if something, and she has a lot of assets, a lot of family assets as well. She'll be inheriting a lot of money. I said, Amy, what happens to your kids? Who's going to be the guardian of your kids if something happens to you? They're all minors. And she says, well, my ex, he'll be responsible for the kids. I said, okay, how do you feel about that? She said, well, I don't think he's the best dad in the world, but he's a good dad, and it is what it is, and we're okay with that. I said, all right, great. What about the money? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, all your money, where's your money going to go? And she said, well, obviously it's going to go to my kids. And I said, your kids are minors. The way you have it set up, that money will go to your kids, but it has to have a custodian. Who do you think the custodian is going to be? Well, the custodian is going to be their dad, their guardian, their parent. How do you feel about your ex-husband being the custodian of all of your assets? Her eyes just got like that big, and we're actually in the process right now of updating that scenario, so that will not be the case. That can be a great use for a trust. That's reaching out from the grave after we're gone. But having money in the trust still allows us to have some control over what happens with our assets. I'm going to caution you on 2 things. Estate planning attorneys, I love them. We have a lot of them in our network. And I actually had this conversation face-to-face with one who I think does a great job. Here's what will happen. An attorney will offer a will-based plan or a trust-based plan. A will-based plan, like I just said, is going to cause you to go through probate. Well, guess what? Guess where an attorney makes money? It's not on creating the will. It's not on creating the trust. That's a few $1,000s. That's not where they're making all their big money. They're making all their big money on the probate process and taking people's estates through probate. Probate can be 4, 6, 8% of our estates. So I actually asked this attorney, I said, is this true that sometimes attorneys, I'm not saying you, but attorneys will recommend a will-based plan so they can go through probate, therefore make more money on the back end? She said, she actually cut me off before I even asked the question. She's just like shaking her head like, yes, I know what you're going to ask me. That's true. So be cautious of that. Another big thing, unfunded trusts. I see this all the time, and guess what? I'm guilty of it. I'm human. I make mistakes. I don't do everything perfectly. The first estate plan that Kelsey and I did, paid a lot of money, had it done, got our document. Inside was all the instructions on what we need to do to fund our trust, is what it's called. We looked at it, we said, that's a lot. Let it live on the kitchen table for a while. Opened it back up a month later, said, that's a lot of steps. Closed it, put it in the safe. Then I realized our trust was not funded. I didn't know what that meant back at the time. Fortunately, I know now. a lot of times you'll get this expensive stack of paperwork, and it becomes just an expensive stack of paperwork if you do not do what's called funding your trusts. We help people take their estate plan from A to Z and make sure everything is funded and titled appropriately, so all that money that you paid to have this plan created actually functions as it should. So 2 things to caution you on there. Laws change. There's Lincoln, I believe that's at the Illinois State Building. Laws change all the time. We need to be aware of that. Reason number 4, you might want to update that estate plan. This is a quick one. You move to a different state. Some of those documents will remain intact. Some of them will not. We've got a friend named Joel. Joel was thinking about moving here to Colorado from Michigan. And he said, hey, Andrew and Kelsey, what do I need to know about this? And Kelsey, because she's fun and exciting, was like, well, we're going to take you to a Broncos game, and we're going to go to Vail, and we're going to go snowboarding, and maybe we'll go to a Rockies game. Even though they're horrible, they're still fun to go to, and all these things. And I was like, whoa, hold on, Joel. I think Michigan is a state where it only requires 1 witness on your will. But in Colorado, it requires 2 witnesses. So boring old business me is thinking about this other stuff while Kelsey's talking to him about all this fun stuff. I'm like, hold on, dude, we need to update your will. Reasons number 5 and 6, and these go hand in hand. So to touch real briefly on number 5, federal tax law change. This takes effect in 2026 as it's written now. I'm not going to go into this because this is kind of, I'll say this, if your net worth is 8 figures and no one's talked to you about what's changing in 2026, please call the office or email us. Our email is simple, hello, HELLO, at hoffmeyerwealth.com. Hello at hoffmeyerwealth.com. Reach out to my team because we need to have that conversation. 8-figure net worth folks, that's not everybody, so I'm not going to spend too much time there, but I am going to spend some time on bullet point number 6, changes in IRA rules. We had Secure Act 1.0 come out. That was followed by the CARES Act. Now we have Secure Act 2.0. You don't need to know what those mean, but that is hundreds of pieces of legislation that changed, a lot of those changed how our beneficiaries can receive distributions from any IRA. So grandpa passes, mom passes, my grandpa passes, I inherit the IRA. What does that mean for me? Our friends at Charles Schwab have a sheet, and on that sheet, it explains the IRA account owner, the beneficiary, the different types, the different age ranges, and how that person can or cannot take their distributions. There are 20 different ways. Some of those overlap, some of those are the same, but there are 20. So we're not going to go in all 20 because that's not the purpose of this. We have other resources for that. If you're curious about that, let us know. We'll get you a resource or a guide. But important to know, if you're the beneficiary of an IRA or you're naming beneficiaries, you want to know what that actually means for them and the options that they have. Again, on that, just kind of more of the same here. Secure Act, this actually went into effect in 2020. But another question I get while I'm thinking about this is, should I have a trust as the beneficiary of my IRA? Common problem I see, someone goes to the attorney, gets their estate plan. The attorney says, your estate plan's done, make your trust the beneficiary of everything. All of it, just across the board. So they call me and they say, hey, we went to the attorney and we have a trust now, so we want that to be the beneficiary of our IRA. And I say, okay, well, your IRA's got $1 million, so what do you think the repercussions of that are? And they're like, that's what the attorney said to do it, so we're doing this. And I say, okay. A trust, okay, let's talk about the term IRA. IRA, individual retirement account. A trust is not an individual, it's an entity. An entity cannot own an IRA because it's not an individual. Therefore, a trust not owning an IRA can create a problem, because what would happen with that $1 million with a trust as a beneficiary, it can actually be considered just a one-time, one-day distribution of $1 million taxable dollars. This is something that needs to be discussed with your CPAs, attorneys, financial planners. Everybody needs to be on the same page when it comes to that. Again, guides, charts, whatever you need. Hello at hoffmeyerwealth.com. Any questions you have, we can help clarify. Talking about beneficiaries is one thing I want you to do right now, tomorrow morning. Pretty easy on our 401ks and IRAs to log in. We can see our beneficiaries. Sometimes it's hidden in the life insurance policies. And here's why I know that. Because it's pretty, I don't want to say often, but it does happen where a prospective client comes in, and part of that new client process, onboarding process, is where we review all the beneficiaries. So I say, bring in your life insurance policy. We want to make sure the beneficiary is up to date. And they say, oh, they're up to date. Everything's good. And I say, that's fine. Well, we might as well check that box, right? Verify that. So they bring it in and I say, well, who's this person? And they go, oh my God, that's my ex-wife. Oh my God, that's my ex-husband. Well, is that who you want as the beneficiary of your life insurance unless there's a legal reason to do so? Probably not. I see it way more often than I would like to admit. Okay, number 7, again, not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is a big one. If you're planning to sell your business, here's what happens. Nice little infographic, little chart here. Here's your business sale. This is before your business sale. You sold your business. This is after. The bubbles are the opportunities. Bigger opportunities, more opportunities before the sale than after. More trusts we can set up. More the attorneys can set up, I should say. I personally cannot draft you a trust for you. More wealth planning and tax planning opportunities. When we're working with business owners who are considering a sale, we like to start talking to them 1 year at least, but preferably 1 or 2 years out, because there's a lot of planning that can be done, especially right now while our taxes are kind of on sale. Very important. We had a client come into us recently. They sold a business for a significant amount of money. Unfortunately, it was before they met us, so our opportunities are kind of limited. Their net worth as a whole, I think we could have done a lot, not only from the net worth perspective, but from the organization perspective when it came to that business sale. We're helping them with other things, but unfortunately, a lot of this stuff, they didn't meet us in time. Number 8, here's a good one. Kids are age of majority. How do we plan for this? What does this mean? Okay, picture this. Fortunately, I don't have, this is a hypothetical. This is not a real client story. Fortunately, I just kind of made this one up. Kids turn 18, goes to college. They're an adult, the age of majority. While in college, car accident, whatever it is, unfortunately, they're in the hospital, they're in a coma. Well, you've been making medical decisions for them their whole life, and now you can't. And you can't do that because there's no healthcare power of attorney, healthcare proxy on file. So the doctors are most likely going to be the ones to make that decision because you can't. They're age of majority. Another important piece of this is even if you have part 1 here, healthcare power of attorney, if it doesn't have part 2, HIPAA authorization, you may not be able to be informed enough to make that decision. What do I mean by that? Well, we know how strict HIPAA is. You can't share health information with people. So if you don't have that HIPAA authorization, you may be able to make the decision, but the doctors aren't going to be able to give you any information. How valuable is that? Not very. Also, general power of attorney, that allows you to do things for the kids. Break lease, sign a lease, pay credit cards, file tax returns, whatever that may be. So in that unfortunate scenario, which is fortunately just a hypothetical in my world, but it happens. So we need to be aware of that. You bought some stuff. Reason number 9. What you own has changed. I don't make these PowerPoints, but whoever does must know me because that's almost my dream car. If that was a Shelby GT500 and not a regular Mustang, that would be my dream car. Anyway, when you buy stuff, that may or may not be a reason to update your estate plan. It depends on what you're buying, how it's titled. If you have a stock account, you can buy, sell, trade, whatever. Your beneficiaries aren't going to change. You're okay. But if you get a new Rolex, a new car, depending on how you're titling that, if you want to gift that car to a grandson, that may be a good reason to update it. There's also something in an estate plan called a pour-over will, which kind of takes these outlier items and says, hey, when I pass, please take these items I forgot about and put them in my trust, and then the trust will dictate what happens to them. Homes. People are buying vacation homes, up 178% year over year in April. Here's the scenario. I retire. I sell this business that I created. I retire, and Kelsey and I love to travel, so we're going to buy a bunch of homes. We're going to buy a place in Vail, a place in Lake Tahoe, or we love Montana. Let's buy a place in Whitefish. And at 3, let's get a couple more. Florida on the beach. 1 more. Condo in Las Vegas. We have 5 homes now, 5 different states. 1 is the state we're domiciled. The other 4 are not states we're domiciled in. Well, guess what happens? If these aren't in a trust or aren't titled appropriately, if something happens to us, we now have probate in all 4 of those states. That's a major burden. Not only is it a burden, but it's very expensive to go through probate in several different states. part of that, your stuff. The future, buddy, Yogi Berra here, the best quotes ever. The future ain't what it used to be. What am I talking about there? Well, I'm talking about digital assets. When you hear the term digital assets, when I say that, you're probably thinking cryptocurrency. Yes, that's part of it. I don't really dive into a lot of cryptocurrency, and I think that number is probably skewed because some people have cryptocurrency accounts of this big, some are this big, and some are this big. But it says the average American's got $55,000 in crypto, basically. But what I think about when I hear digital assets, my email, my Gmail, my Facebook, my Instagram. If you read the UELs, end user license agreements, and the T&C, the terms and conditions, you will find that those accounts are non-transferable and they cannot just give a random person your password. So if I'm gone and you are trying to take control of my account because you're my buddy, you can't. They're not going to let you. So we now name a digital executor for all of our digital assets. Help us out with these different emails, social media accounts. It's a big thing. Last, and a very big one, and again, I'm human, guilty. I stand here today, I'm giving you a presentation on updating estate plans, and mine is not up to date. And here's why. Faulty fiduciary. A fiduciary is a person. Faulty means they're broken. Okay, these people aren't actually broken, but they're just not the right person to be a fiduciary. Things to consider. Big one that I see, age. We named mom or dad as a medical power of attorney. We've aged, they've aged. Mom and dad are in their 80s now. Maybe that's not the person we want to have as a medical power of attorney. Here's what happened to me, still part of the family. These guys weren't part of the family, but we have an individual named Greg as a backup trustee for our trust and an individual named Brandon. Love Greg, love Brandon, but the reality is our life and our friends have kind of gone this way. Their life and their friends have kind of gone that way, and we just don't talk as much anymore. We don't see them as much anymore. They're not the people that we should have as our trustees. So fortunately, once I get around to it, it's a very easy process because, again, we do all this digitally for our clients. I just need to log in, go to my trustees, see where it says Greg and Brandon, hit edit, change them, renotarize it. It's really simple to do, but like they say, the cobbler's son always has the worst shoes. So after doing this stuff, taking care of clients all day long, the last thing Kelsey and I want to do when we get home is work on our own estate plan. But we're all going to agree. You, me, we're going to agree to take care of that stuff. Blended families, probably the biggest one I see out of everything. Blended family. Here's what this looks like. Okay, I've got two clients, husband and wife. They were both married before, so we had husband, wife, husband, wife. Three kids, husband, wife, 3 kids, 3 kids. Got divorced. Now they're married. No kids together. So they're married, and they have 3 kids from prior marriages. Husband, he's got the house. He's got all the assets, which he inherited from his mom. So his mom passed away. He got the house, the assets. Wife, not a lot of assets on her side of the family. So as it stands in typical estate planning, without an actual plan in place, this money that the husband has, when he passes, because he's older than his spouse, it's going to go to her. So that's all good. She's going to get the house. She's going to get the money. That's fine. When she passes, it's going to her kids. Now we've fixed that, but that's what it looked like prior. So his mom, the kid's grandma, passes. He got all the money in the house. Now, when he passes, it will go to his wife temporarily while she is alive. As soon as she passes, it's back to his kids. Her kids don't get any of it. So the money's staying on his side. And it's not that he doesn't love the kids. He'll give them something. It's just that the money came from mom or grandma. So wouldn't you want to keep it on your side of the family? Of course he would. Last quick thing, if you have a trust, you may want to consider a corporate trustee. Why? Because serving as a trustee is hard to work. There's Greg and Brandon, who we have named as our trustees. They honestly probably don't even want to do that at this point because it would be a lot of work to go through our assets and execute all our wishes. We have a very detailed trust. We have a lot of instructions in there. Corporate trustee, that's just a bank. We have a bank that we work with. They have a trust department. They make sure everything's filed, distributions happen on time, taxes are filed on time. They actually know how to read the trust documents versus your friend, your neighbor, your cousin, who you name. They probably don't know how to read a trust document. unless they're a professional in that area. Powers of attorney, these are just a couple pictures, and then we're going to get to the last slide. Again, we make estate planning this very complicated thing, and it doesn't need to be. And I can help you with that. My team can help you with that. I want you to picture the day that you wake up or you go home at night, and all of this is just lifted off your chest. I know you've had it on your to-do list for years because it can be so complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Again, we've got all the resources, guides, tools, processes to help you out. hello@hoffmeyerwealth.com. Shoot us an email. Send in a contact sheet through our website. Whatever it is, plenty of ways to get a hold of us. And here's the thing. When I get to my office every morning, I have this little sheet of paper, and it has MITs and LITs. MITs are my most important tasks. LITs are my least important tasks. 3 MITs, 3 LITs a day. That's what I focus on. So here's what we're going to do. You and me both. Tomorrow morning, get a sticky note. I don't care what you get out. Write it on your hand if you have to. You're going to write 1 MIT, and I'm going to do the same tomorrow morning. And it's going to say, update estate plan, create estate plan, whatever it is. And we're going to get that done. Because things happen in life. And it doesn't only happen when we're in our 80s. It happens to young people, old people, rich people, poor people. So reach out to us if you need help. We are selective on who we work with. I'll be completely candid about that. But if we can't help, if we're not a right fit, we can work with people across the country. But that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to be the right fit. We can at least give you something to steer you in the right direction. So with that, let's get those plans updated. Thanks for watching.